Commander Lee Dae-ho moved through the dark jungle like a shadow. His black combat gear made him nearly invisible in the moonlight. Behind him, 4 other Navy SEALs followed in perfect silence. They had been walking for 3 hours without making a single sound. The planet Kepler 442b looked almost like Earth, but everything felt wrong. The trees were too tall, and their leaves glowed with a strange blue light. The air smelled like metal and electricity. Strange sounds came from the forest that no human had ever heard before. Park Jin-woo carried the heavy demolition pack on his back. He was the team's explosive expert and could blow up anything from a small door to an entire building. His hands were steady even though they all knew this mission was dangerous. The energy readings they had detected 3 days ago were unlike anything in human technology. Kim So-ra held her sniper rifle ready. She was the best shot in their unit and could hit a target from over a mile away. Her dark eyes scanned the trees, looking for any movement. She had killed enemy soldiers from distances so far they never even knew she was there. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight felt like they were being watched. Choi Min-ho checked his medical supplies for the 10th time. As the team medic, he made sure everyone stayed alive and healthy. He carried special medicines and tools to treat wounds in the field. His bag also held emergency surgery equipment in case someone got badly hurt. He hoped they would not need any of it tonight. Yun-ha-na monitored the radio signals on her equipment. She was their communications specialist and could hack into enemy systems or call for backup when needed. Her computer showed strange patterns in the electromagnetic spectrum. The readings were getting stronger as they moved toward their target. Team. Mission was simple in theory, but dangerous in practice. Satellite scans had detected massive energy signatures coming from this location. The energy patterns did not match any known human technology. Command wanted them to investigate and report back. If it was an enemy weapon, they were supposed to destroy it. If it was something else, they were supposed to gather intelligence and leave quietly. Dae-ho raised his hand and the team stopped moving instantly. Through his night vision goggles, he could see a clearing ahead. In the center stood a structure that definitely was not built by humans. It looked like a giant black crystal growing out of the ground. Strange lights pulsed inside it like a heartbeat. The energy readings on Ha-na's equipment were going crazy. The team spread out and took positions around the clearing. So-ra climbed a tall tree to get a better view through her rifle scope. Jin-woo started looking for the best places to put explosives if they needed to destroy the structure. Min-ho stayed with Ha-na while she tried to scan the crystal with her instruments. That was when everything went wrong. The sky above them suddenly filled with massive ships. They were huge black vessels that blocked out the stars. The ships were completely silent as they descended from space. No human technology could make something that big move without any sound. The crystal in the clearing started glowing brighter and brighter. Dae-ho grabbed his radio but only heard static. Ha-na was frantically trying to reach their base, but all communications were blocked. The alien ships had somehow cut off all their signals to the outside world. They were completely alone on a hostile planet with no way to call for help. Bright beams of light shot down from the ships. Where the beams touched the ground, alien soldiers appeared. They were enormous creatures standing over 8 feet tall. Their skin looked like black armor, and they had 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Each alien carried weapons that glowed with purple energy. The aliens were called the Vorthak Empire, though the humans did not know this yet. They were conquerors who had destroyed dozens of worlds and enslaved millions of creatures. They had been looking for the human colonies for months. Tonight they had finally found one. So-ra opened fire from her tree position. Her first shot hit an alien in the center of its chest, but barely left a mark. The creature's armor was incredibly strong. She fired again and again, but the aliens did not seem bothered by her bullets. They turned toward her position and raised their energy weapons. Purple beams of deadly light filled the air. The tree So-ra was hiding in exploded into flames. She jumped to another tree, but more beams followed her. The aliens were fast, and their weapons were devastatingly powerful. Human. Technology was no match for what they were facing. Jinwoo tried to detonate his explosives near a group of aliens. The blast was huge and shook the entire forest, but when the smoke cleared, the aliens were still standing. Their armor had protected them from the explosion. Jinwoo stared in shock as the creatures turned toward him. He reached for another explosive, but purple energy beams cut him down before he could throw it. Minho dragged the wounded Hana behind a fallen log. She had been hit by shrapnel from the explosion and was bleeding badly. He tried to stop the bleeding while alien soldiers surrounded their position. There was nowhere left to run and nowhere left to hide. Daeho fought with everything he had learned in 20 years of military service. He used his knife to attack the aliens' weak points, but their armor was too strong. He tried to use their size against them, but they were faster than they looked. One alien grabbed him with 2 of its 4 arms and lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The alien commander stepped forward. General Crix was even larger than his soldiers and wore more elaborate armor. He studied the captured humans with cold, intelligent eyes. He had heard stories about this species called humans, but had never seen them before. They looked small and weak compared to other creatures his empire had conquered. Crick spoke in perfect English, which surprised the humans. The Vorthak had been studying human transmissions for months and had learned their language. He told the survivors they were now prisoners of the Vorthak Empire. Their world would be conquered, and their people would become slaves. Sora, Minho, and Hana were dragged onto the alien ships along with Daeho. Jinwoo was dead, and his body was left behind in the burning forest. The ships lifted off silently and headed toward Earth, carrying devastating weapons. The Vorthak believed they had won an easy victory against a primitive species. But General Crix had made a terrible mistake. Instead of killing the humans immediately, he decided to study them first. He wanted to understand what made these creatures fight so desperately when facing impossible odds. He ordered them taken to holding cells where they would be interrogated and examined. Daeho remained calm, even as he was thrown into a small metal cell. His SEAL training had taught him that capture was just another kind of battlefield. Every moment he stayed alive was another chance to strike back at his enemies. The aliens thought they had won, but the real war was just beginning. Daeho moved through the alien ship's maintenance tunnels like he had been born there. The darkness did not bother him because Navy SEALs were trained to operate in any environment. He had memorized the ship's layout and knew where every important system was located. Behind him, Sora, Minho, and Hana followed in complete silence. The first target was the ship's water recycling system. Every living creature needed water to survive, and the Vorthak were no different. Daeho had noticed during his captivity that the aliens drank large amounts of fluid every day. If he could make their water supply unreliable, it would weaken them both physically and mentally. Using the stolen plasma cutter, Daeho carefully opened an access panel to the water processing center. The alien technology was advanced, but the basic principles were the same as human systems. Water came in dirty, and chemicals cleaned it before it went back to the crew areas. Daeho studied the chemical tanks and found exactly what he needed. He did not want to poison the water because that might kill the aliens too quickly. Dead enemies could not feel fear, and Daeho wanted the Vorthak to be afraid. Instead, he added compounds that would make the water taste terrible without causing immediate harm. The aliens would be able to drink it, but they would not enjoy it. Within hours, the entire crew was complaining about the bad-tasting water. The Vorthak engineers could not figure out what was wrong with their system. All the equipment appeared to be working normally, but the water tasted like metal and chemicals. The crew had to use emergency water supplies, which were limited and tasted even worse. While the aliens dealt with their water problems, Daeho moved to his second target. The armory was heavily guarded, but the humans did not need to get inside. They only needed to access the power and data lines that connected the weapons to the ship's systems. Sora used her steady hands to help Daiho modify the circuits. They did not steal any weapons or cause obvious damage. Instead, they made subtle changes to the targeting systems and power regulators. The weapons would still fire, but they would not work properly. Some would shoot inaccurately, while others would overheat and shut down unexpectedly. A few weapons were programmed to overload completely and injure anyone who tried to use them. The sabotage took effect during the next weapons training session. Vorthak warriors tried to practice with their plasma rifles, but found guns that would not aim straight. Several weapons exploded in their users' hands, causing burns and injuries. The armory chief was called before General Crix to explain how sophisticated military equipment was failing simultaneously. The armory chief had no explanation. All the weapons had been working perfectly the day before. The diagnostic systems showed no problems with any of the equipment. Yet somehow dozens of rifles and energy weapons were malfunctioning at the same time. Crix was furious, but there was no one to blame and no obvious cause to fix. Daiho began the psychological phase of his campaign while the aliens struggled with their equipment failures. He had learned some Vorthak words during his interrogation, and Hana helped him understand more of their language. Using tools from the maintenance areas, he began carving messages in places where the crew would find them. The first message appeared in a corridor near the crew quarters. It was carved into the metal wall in Vorthak script and said simply, "You cannot hide." The alien who found it reported it to security, but no one could explain how it got there. The corridor was monitored by cameras, but the recordings showed nothing unusual. More messages appeared over the next few days. "The hunt has begun" was found carved into a table in the mess hall. "Your death comes from the shadows" appeared on the wall of a storage room. Each message was discovered in a different location, and none of the security systems captured who was making them. The psychological impact on the Vorthak crew was devastating. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated every enemy they had ever faced. They were used to being the ones who inspired fear in others. Now they found themselves jumping at unexpected sounds and looking over their shoulders constantly. Sleep became difficult for many crew members. They lay in their bunks wondering if the invisible humans might appear in their rooms during the night. Some aliens requested transfers to different areas of the ship. Others asked for extra security patrols in their work areas. The confident conquerors were becoming nervous and paranoid. General Crix ordered increased patrols throughout the ship, but the security teams found nothing. The humans had vanished completely into the infrastructure and could appear anywhere at any time. The massive warship had thousands of maintenance tunnels, crawl spaces, and service areas. It would take months to search them all thoroughly. The situation got worse when 3 Vorthak warriors were found unconscious in a storage bay. They had been knocked out with the same pressure point technique Daiho had used on the prison guard. Their weapons were missing and strange symbols were carved into the metal walls nearby. The symbols spelled "seal" in Vorthak script, though the aliens did not understand what it meant. Security footage from the storage bay had mysteriously malfunctioned at exactly the right time. The cameras showed the 3 warriors entering the room, but never showed what happened to them or who attacked them. The video simply went black for 30 minutes, and then resumed showing the unconscious aliens on the floor. Crix realized he was facing something unlike any enemy the Vorthak Empire had ever encountered. These humans were not trying to fight his warriors directly, or damage his ship, obviously. Instead, they were waging a war of nerves and sabotage that was slowly destroying his crew's morale and confidence. The general called his senior officers together for an emergency meeting. He told them they were dealing with highly trained enemy agents who specialized in this type of warfare. He ordered them to seal off all maintenance areas and post guards at every access point. He wanted the humans found and eliminated immediately. But Daiho had anticipated this response. While the Vorthak officers were meeting, he was leading his team to a new hiding place deeper in the ship's infrastructure. They had plenty of food, and water taken from maintenance supplies. They had weapons taken from unconscious guards. Most importantly, they had detailed knowledge of the ship's systems and layout. The hunt continued, but now the Vorthak were not sure who was hunting whom. Every shadow might hide a human warrior. Every system failure might be sabotage. Every strange noise might be the sound of death approaching through the darkness. The 4 Navy SEALs had turned the alien warship into their personal battlefield. They struck without warning and vanished without trace. They were ghosts in the machine, turning the Vorthak's own technology against them, and this was only the beginning. 3 days passed inside the alien prison ship, and Daeho had not spoken a single word to his captors. The Vorthak soldiers brought him to interrogation rooms twice each day, but he just sat there in silence. They used machines that sent painful, electric shocks through his body. They used devices that made loud screeching sounds to hurt his ears. They even used drugs that were supposed to make him tell the truth. Nothing worked on the Navy SEAL commander. His training had prepared him for exactly this situation. He knew how to resist pain and how to keep his mind focused even when his body was suffering. While the aliens tortured him, he was actually studying them. He watched how they moved and how they acted. He listened to their language and learned their routines. The Vorthak guards thought he was weak and broken, but Daeho was gathering intelligence. He noticed that the aliens were overconfident. They believed their physical strength made them superior to all other species. They had conquered so many worlds that they never expected real resistance from their prisoners. In the cell next to his, Kim Sora was recovering from her injuries. The explosion in the forest had hurt her badly, but she was getting stronger each day. She whispered to Daeho through the metal walls when the guards were not listening. She told him she had counted exactly how many guards walked past their cells. Every hour, Choi Minho was taking care of Yoon Hana in another nearby cell. Hana had been hurt worse than the others and needed medical attention. Minho used strips from his uniform to bandage her wounds. He had no proper medical supplies, but he did his best to keep her alive and healthy. The alien prison ship was enormous. It was one of 12 massive vessels heading toward Earth. Each ship carried thousands of Vorthak warriors and weapons powerful enough to destroy entire cities. The aliens planned to attack humanity and turn all humans into slaves, just like they had done to dozens of other species. General Crix visited the prison area on the 3rd day. He wanted to see the human prisoners before they reached Earth. He looked at Daeho through the bars of his cell and spoke in English. He said humans were weak creatures who would make good workers in the mines and factories of the Vorthak Empire. Daeho finally spoke for the first time since his capture. He looked directly at General Crix and said in a calm voice that the alien had made a big mistake. He said the Vorthak had no idea what they were dealing with when they captured a Navy SEAL. Crix laughed and said one small human could not possibly threaten the mighty Vorthak Empire. That night, Daeho put his plan into action. He had been watching the guard rotations for 3 days and knew exactly when each alien would walk past his cell. The guards were lazy because they thought the humans were helpless. They did not expect any prisoner to be capable of escape. When the guard came to check on his cell, Daeho was ready. He had loosened one of the metal bars over the past 3 days by working on it constantly. The guard looked through the bars and saw Daeho lying on his bed, apparently asleep. The alien opened the cell door to get a closer look. Daeho moved faster than the alien could react. He grabbed the guard around the neck and used a pressure point technique to make him unconscious without killing him. The Vorthak warrior was much larger and stronger than Daeho, but the human knew exactly where to apply pressure to shut down the alien's nervous system. The unconscious guard had a small plasma-cutting tool on his belt. Daeho took the tool and examined it carefully. It was designed to cut through metal and could also be used as a weapon. The human had worked with similar tools during his military training and quickly figured out how to modify it. Within minutes, Daeho had turned the plasma cutter into both a weapon and a key. He used it to cut open the locks on the other cells and freed his teammates. So-Ra was still weak but could walk and fight. Minho helped Hana, who was getting better but still needed support. The four humans gathered in Daeho's cell to make their plans. They were deep inside an alien warship surrounded by thousands of enemies. They had no way to contact Earth and no way to escape in the traditional sense. But Daeho had studied the ship during his 3 days of captivity and had noticed something important. The Vorthak had built their ship to be strong against external attacks, but they had never considered internal threats. The ventilation system was large enough for humans to crawl through. The maintenance tunnels were not guarded because the aliens never imagined prisoners could access them. The ship was like a fortress that was impregnable from the outside but vulnerable from within. Daeho led his team into the ventilation system. The metal tunnels were dark and cramped, but the humans were small enough to move through them easily. So-Ra used her training to move silently, even though she was still hurt. Minho helped Hana navigate the tight spaces. They moved like ghosts through the bowels of the alien ship. The Vorthak discovered the unconscious guard an hour later. General Crix was furious when he learned the humans had escaped. He ordered search teams to find them immediately. Hundreds of alien soldiers began looking through every room and corridor on the ship, but the humans were no longer in the normal areas of the ship. They had disappeared into the infrastructure itself. Daeho had found blueprints of the ship in a maintenance area and was studying the layout. He was learning where all the important systems were located and how they connected to each other. The Vorthak soldiers searched for hours but found no trace of the escaped prisoners. They looked in storage rooms and weapon bays. They checked the engine areas and command centers. They never thought to look in the small tunnels and shafts that carried air and power throughout the ship. While the aliens searched, Daeho was planning his next moves. He had realized something that filled him with grim satisfaction. The Vorthak thought they were the hunters and the humans were their prey, but now the situation had changed completely. The alien ship had become a hunting ground, and Daeho was no longer the prey. He was the predator. General Crix increased security throughout the ship, but it was already too late. 4 highly trained human warriors had vanished into the ship systems like smoke. They could strike anywhere at any time and disappear before the aliens could respond. The hunt had begun, but the Vorthak did not yet realize they were the ones being hunted. The massive alien warship continued its journey toward Earth, carrying what its crew believed would be an easy conquest. They had no idea that death was moving through their ship's ventilation system. They had no idea that their worst nightmare had just awakened in the darkness between their walls. After a week of guerrilla warfare, Daeho was ready for his most dangerous operation yet. He had discovered that the alien ship was controlled by a central computer system called the Battle Matrix. This artificial intelligence managed everything, from navigation to life support to weapons targeting. If he could gain access to it, he could turn the entire ship into his weapon. The Battle Matrix was located in the most heavily protected area of the ship. Dozens of guards surrounded it at all times, and multiple security systems monitored every approach. But Daeho had found something the Vorthak had never considered. The computer needed maintenance access points throughout the ship to monitor and control all the various systems. Hana had recovered enough to help with the technical aspects of the mission. Before her capture, she had been one of the best computer specialists in the human military. She understood how artificial intelligence systems worked and how to find weaknesses in their programming. Together, she and Daeho began studying the Battle Matrix through its maintenance interfaces. The Vorthak had made their computer system incredibly sophisticated, but they had also made it arrogant. The Battle Matrix believed it was superior to all biological intelligence and could not be fooled or defeated by primitive creatures. This overconfidence became its weakness when it encountered humans who understood both technology and psychology. Daeho and Hana spent 3 days learning how the Battle Matrix processed information and made decisions. They discovered that it relied heavily on sensor data and trusted that all inputs were accurate. The computer never considered that someone might deliberately feed it false information to manipulate its behavior. Using techniques from advanced cyber warfare training, Hana began introducing subtle errors into the battle matrix data streams. She made small changes to navigation readings that would cause the ship to drift slightly off course. She modified environmental sensors to create temperature fluctuations in crew areas. Most importantly, she gained access to the internal communication systems. The ability to monitor Vorthak communications was like having eyes and ears throughout the entire ship. Daeho could now listen to the aliens' plans and know exactly where they would be at any given time. He could hear their fears and frustrations as the mysterious sabotage continued. He could even influence their decisions by feeding false information through the compromised communication network. General Crix was becoming increasingly frustrated with his inability to catch the human saboteurs. His crew was demoralized and his equipment was unreliable. Worse yet, the ship was slowly drifting away from its planned course toward Earth. The navigation systems showed they were on target, but somehow they were falling behind the rest of the fleet. The general decided to move his remaining prisoners to a maximum security holding area deep in the ship's core. When he arrived at the prison section, he discovered that all the cells were empty. Sora, Minho, and Hana had vanished, just like Daeho. Security recordings showed nothing, and the guards claimed they had checked the cells just hours before. Crix realized with growing horror that all 4 human prisoners were now loose somewhere in his ship. These were not ordinary escaped prisoners who would try to steal a shuttle and flee. These were trained military specialists who were systematically destroying his ship from within. They had turned his own vessel into a weapon against his crew. The 4 humans had indeed reunited and were now operating as a coordinated team. Sora had fully recovered from her injuries and was using stolen Vorthak weapons to eliminate guards from impossible positions. Her sniper skills translated perfectly to the alien rifles once she learned how they worked. She could kill sentries from hiding spots they never suspected existed. Minho used his medical knowledge to create non-lethal but debilitating compounds from chemicals found throughout the ship. He made gases that caused temporary blindness and powders that induced severe nausea. His creations were carefully designed to weaken the aliens without killing them immediately. Terrified enemies spread more fear than dead ones. Hana had become the team's electronic warfare specialist. She used her access to the battle matrix to send false orders and contradictory commands throughout the ship. Vorthak officers received messages telling them to report to locations where ambushes waited. Security teams were sent to investigate problems that did not exist, while real attacks happened elsewhere. Daeho coordinated all these activities while continuing his own campaign of psychological warfare. He had learned that the Vorthak were naturally hierarchical and followed orders without question. By manipulating their communication systems, he could make them follow commands that led them into traps or sent them away from critical areas. The breakthrough came when Hana discovered she could access the ship's personnel files through the battle matrix. She learned the names and backgrounds of every Vorthak on board, including their fears and weaknesses. Some aliens were afraid of confined spaces, while others feared darkness. This information became ammunition for psychological attacks tailored to individual crew members. The most devastating attack targeted the ship's senior officers during their daily briefing. Hana used the environmental controls to gradually reduce the lighting in the conference room while increasing the temperature. Strange sounds echoed through the ventilation system. The officers became increasingly uncomfortable, but could not identify the source of their distress. Then, Daeho's voice came through the communication system, speaking in perfect Vorthak. He told the officers that they were all going to die slowly and painfully. He described exactly how he would kill each one using information from their personnel files. He knew their names, their ranks, and their personal fears. The psychological impact was devastating. General Crix tried to trace the communication, but Ha-Na had routed it through dozens of different systems. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. When Crix ordered the communication system shut down, the voice continued through the emergency backup network. There was no way to stop it or block it completely. Several junior officers broke down completely during the briefing. They had conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations, but they had never faced an enemy who could reach into their minds and exploit their deepest fears. Some requested immediate transfers off the ship. Others asked to be placed in protective custody. The situation reached a crisis point when the ship's chief engineer reported that critical systems were failing throughout the vessel. Life support was unreliable in some sections. Navigation was drifting further off course. Weapons targeting was completely inaccurate. The ship was slowly falling apart from within, and no one could explain why. Crix knew he needed help beyond what his regular crew could provide. He sent an emergency message to the Vorthak High Command requesting immediate assistance. He told them he was facing an unprecedented threat that required specialized expertise to counter. He needed the Empire's best hunters and killers. The response came within hours. The Death Guard would be deployed to his ship immediately. These were the Vorthak Empire's most elite warriors who had never failed to eliminate a target. They were trained specifically to hunt down and destroy enemies who used unconventional tactics. They would end the human problem once and for all. But Deho was listening to all communications through his access to the battle matrix. He knew the Death Guard was coming, and he knew their reputation. These aliens were different from the regular Vorthak soldiers. They were smarter, more experienced, and far more dangerous. The real battle was about to begin. As the Death Guard shuttle approached his ship, General Crix felt confident for the first time in weeks. Soon, the invisible humans would be caught and killed. Soon, his ship would be back under proper control. Soon, the Vorthak Empire would continue its inevitable conquest of the galaxy. He had no idea that the humans were already preparing to turn his rescue into his doom. The Death Guard arrived on General Crix's ship like harbingers of doom. These were not ordinary Vorthak soldiers, but the Empire's most elite killers. Each warrior had eliminated hundreds of enemies across dozens of worlds. They wore special black armor that made them nearly invisible and carried weapons designed specifically for hunting dangerous prey. Commander Vex led the Death Guard unit. He was smaller than most Vorthak, but far more deadly. His 4 arms moved with perfect coordination, and his reflexes were faster than any human could match. He had personally killed the leaders of 17 different rebellions and had never failed to complete a mission. He considered hunting the escaped humans an amusing challenge. Vex studied the reports of the humans' activities with professional interest. He had never encountered enemies who fought this way before. Most species either surrendered immediately or fought conventional battles that the Vorthak easily won. These humans were different. They used intelligence and cunning instead of brute force. They turned their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. The Death Guard commander divided his 12 warriors into 4 hunting teams. Each team would search a different section of the ship using advanced sensors and tracking equipment. They would sweep through every maintenance tunnel and service corridor until they found their prey. Vex estimated the hunt would take no more than 6 hours. But Deho had been preparing for this moment ever since he learned the Death Guard was coming. He had spent weeks studying the ship's structure and identifying key weaknesses in its design. Using explosives created from maintenance chemicals and knowledge learned from his dead teammate Jin Woo, he had prepared a series of devastating surprises. The first Death Guard team entered the lower maintenance sections where the humans had been hiding. They moved with professional efficiency, using sensors to detect heat signatures and chemical traces. Their equipment was far more advanced than anything the regular Vorthak soldiers possessed. Within minutes, they had located what appeared to be a human hiding spot. The warriors approached the location carefully with weapons ready. They found evidence that someone had been living there recently, including improvised bedding and empty food containers. But the humans themselves were nowhere to be seen. As the Death Guard searched the area more thoroughly, they triggered Daeho's first trap. Explosions rocked the entire section as strategically placed charges detonated throughout the maintenance levels. Daeho had not tried to kill the Death Guard directly because their armor was too strong. Instead, he had targeted the structural supports that held this part of the ship together. Tons of metal and machinery collapsed, creating an impassable barrier. The Death Guard team found themselves cut off from the rest of the ship with no way to communicate with their commander. The explosions had severed power lines and communication cables throughout the entire section. They were trapped in a maze of twisted metal and sparking electrical systems, with 4 invisible enemies stalking them through the darkness. Sora struck first from her concealed position in the wreckage. She had stolen a Death Guard rifle from a previous engagement and learned how to use its advanced targeting system. Her shot took down one warrior instantly with a precision hit to a weak point in his armor. The other Death Guard spun toward her position, but she had already vanished into the shadows. The second team was searching the upper levels when Min Ho's chemical weapons began taking effect. He had introduced colorless, odorless gases into the ventilation system that caused severe disorientation and nausea. The Death Guard warriors found their vision blurring and their coordination failing as the toxic compounds entered their bloodstreams through their breathing apparatus. Hana used her control of the battle matrix to turn the ship's own systems against the hunters. She activated fire suppression systems that filled corridors with blinding foam. She triggered emergency lockdowns that sealed blast doors and trapped individual warriors in small rooms. She even reversed the artificial gravity in some sections, causing the Death Guard to lose their footing and fall upward into the ceiling. Commander Vex realized his hunters were being systematically eliminated by enemies who understood the ship's environment better than he did. These humans had turned the vessel into their personal weapon, using every system and structure as tools of war. The Death Guard were elite killers, but they had never faced opponents who could reshape the battlefield itself. The third team made the mistake of entering the central power core area, where Daeho was waiting for them. The Navy SEAL commander had chosen this location carefully because it offered multiple levels and hiding places while containing systems that could be used as weapons. The power core itself generated enormous amounts of energy that could be redirected with the right knowledge. Daeho used the core's electromagnetic fields to interfere with the Death Guard's sensors and communication equipment. Their advanced technology became useless in the intense energy environment. The warriors had to rely on their natural senses to hunt their prey, but humans were better at hiding and moving silently than the aliens had expected. The battle in the power core was brutal and personal. Daeho used his knowledge of the environment to attack from unexpected angles. He swung between power conduits like a jungle gym and used energy discharges to blind his enemies. When one Death Guard warrior cornered him, Daeho redirected a power coupling to electrocute the alien through his own armor. Commander Vex grew increasingly frustrated as his teams reported losses and equipment failures. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had encountered before. They did not stand and fight honorably, but instead used every dirty trick and unfair advantage they could find. They turned the ship's own systems against his warriors and struck from hiding like cowards. But Vex did not understand that this was exactly how Navy SEALs were trained to fight. Honor and fairness were luxuries that professional soldiers could not afford when facing superior enemies. Daeho and his team used every weapon available, including the environment itself, because their mission was to win, not to fight by their opponent's rules. The 4th Death Guard team finally cornered Hana in a computer access room where she had been working on the battle matrix. They thought they had found an easy target because she appeared to be alone and focused on her technical work. They did not realize she was deliberately acting as bait to draw them into position for the final trap. As the Death Guard warriors entered the room, Hana activated the last of Daeho's explosive charges. These were not aimed at the ship structure, but at the power conduits that fed the artificial gravity generators. The sudden loss of gravity sent everything in the room floating, including the heavily armored aliens who could not maneuver effectively. In zero-G conditions, Sora and Minho were waiting in concealed positions, with magnetic grapples that let them move and aim in the weightless environment. They eliminated the disoriented Death Guard warriors with precise shots before the aliens could adapt to the new conditions. Within minutes, the most elite team in the room was floating motionless in the artificial void. Commander Vex found himself alone and surrounded by evidence of his team's total defeat. 12 of the Empire's best warriors had been eliminated by 4 humans using nothing but intelligence, creativity, and intimate knowledge of their environment. It was a humiliation beyond anything in Vorthak military history. The final confrontation took place in the ship's central corridor, where Vex challenged Deho to single combat. The Death Guard commander believed his superior size, strength, and weapons would give him an easy victory over the small human. He did not understand that Deho had been preparing for exactly this moment. The battle was over in seconds. Vex attacked with all 4 arms moving in perfect coordination, but Deho was no longer where the alien expected him to be. The human had used his knowledge of the ship's layout to position himself near a maintenance hatch that gave him access to weapons and tools the alien could not see. When other Death Guard warriors arrived to investigate, they found their commander's body with a message carved into the metal wall nearby. The words were written in Vorthak script and said simply, "Send more killers." The psychological impact was devastating because it meant the humans were not afraid of the Empire's best warriors. General Crix stared at the message in horror and realized the full magnitude of his mistake. He had not captured 4 primitive creatures, as he had believed. He had captured 4 of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy and given them access to his ship. Now they owned the vessel more completely than he did. The hunt was over, but the humans had won. General Crix stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display showing Earth growing larger on the screen. His ship was damaged and his crew was demoralized, but he still had enough firepower to destroy the human homeworld. The Death Guard had failed, but conventional weapons could still complete the mission. He would not return to the Vorthak Empire empty-handed. The general issued orders for immediate planetary bombardment. 12 massive dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace, near Earth, and began positioning themselves for the attack. Each ship carried weapons capable of cracking continents and boiling oceans. The human planet would be reduced to molten slag within hours of the first shot. But Deho had been listening to all communications through his control of the battle matrix. He knew the aliens planned to destroy Earth rather than risk further humiliation from human resistance. This was exactly what he had been preparing for during his weeks of infiltrating the ship's computer systems. The real battle was just beginning. While Crix gave orders to his weapons officers, Hana was deep in the ship's computer core making final adjustments to her masterpiece. She had spent days reprogramming the battle matrix and learning how to control not just her own ship, but the entire Vorthak fleet. The aliens had made their ships work together through a shared tactical network that she now owned completely. The first indication something was wrong came when the weapons officers reported targeting system failures. The massive plasma cannons that should have been aiming at Earth were instead turning toward other ships in the fleet. Diagnostic systems showed all equipment functioning normally, but the weapons refused to fire at their intended target. Crix ordered manual targeting overrides, but discovered that the ship's computer systems would not accept human input. The battle matrix had been completely compromised and was no longer following Vorthak commands. Instead, it was executing a program written by human intelligence that turned every ship in the fleet into weapons aimed at each other. The climax began when the flagship opened fire on its nearest companion vessel. The massive energy beams that were meant to destroy cities instead tore through the armor of another Vorthak dreadnought. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as one of the Empire's most powerful warships died in seconds under the concentrated firepower of its own ally. Other ships in the fleet tried to respond, but found their weapon systems completely out of control. They fired on each other in a deadly dance of mutual destruction, orchestrated by the human saboteurs. The aliens had built their ships to work together as a coordinated force, but now that cooperation had become their doom. Crick screamed orders at his officers, but nothing could stop the carnage. The battle matrix was executing Daeho's program with ruthless efficiency. Every ship that tried to target Earth found its weapons redirected toward other vessels in the fleet. The mighty Vorthak armada was destroying itself in the most spectacular display of friendly fire in galactic history. The general realized with growing horror that he had been outmaneuvered by creatures he had considered primitive and weak. The humans had not just escaped from his prison or sabotaged his ship. They had turned his entire invasion fleet into a weapon aimed at itself. Every advantage the Vorthak possessed had been reversed and used against them. Sora Minho and Hana joined Daeho in the command center as the alien crew abandoned their posts in panic. The 4 Navy SEALs watched the tactical display showing Vorthak ships exploding one after another in brilliant flashes of light. Earth remained untouched, while its would-be conquerors eliminated each other with devastating efficiency. The psychological impact on the surviving Vorthak was complete and total. These were warriors who had conquered 47 worlds and never faced defeat. Now they watched their most powerful fleet destroy itself because 4 small humans had outsmarted their entire military system. It was a humiliation that would echo through their empire for generations. General Crix made one final attempt to salvage the situation. He ordered his ship to ram the nearest human orbital station in a suicide attack that would at least damage Earth defenses. But Hana had anticipated this desperate move and programmed the battle matrix to prevent it. Instead of diving toward Earth, the flagship turned toward the largest remaining Vorthak vessel. The collision between the 2 massive dreadnoughts created an explosion visible from Earth's surface. Billions of tons of alien technology and weaponry vanished in a brief new star that lit up the night sky. The Vorthak invasion fleet had been completely eliminated not by human weapons, but by human intelligence turning alien technology against itself. As the flagship died around them, Daeho led his team to the shuttle bay, where they had identified a small Vorthak escape craft. The 4 humans had to fight their way through panicking aliens who were more concerned with reaching life pods than stopping their tormentors. The ship was falling apart as critical systems failed throughout its structure. Crix encountered the humans in the final corridor before the shuttle bay. The general was badly wounded from falling debris, but still capable of fighting. He challenged Daeho to one last battle, declaring that he would not let the humans escape to spread word of Vorthak defeat throughout the galaxy. The fight was brief and one-sided. Crix was larger.